We are those guys. Hey, you see these guys over there? Well, don't forget about those guys. I'm Alex Hardy, joined as always Nick Ferguson, 10 years in the National Football League, member of the Denver Broncos, New York Jets, Houston Texans. We'll get to those teams, your teams, as we continue to navigate the offseason. Kind of a few, news points, like current events that we'll get to, as well as kind of philosophical, hey, your team has a new coach. How does the offseason look? But first, Nick Ferguson, how's everything looking for you, man? What's going on?
Everything is looking peachy over here because, unlike some places, we're not getting overabundance of rain or we're not getting smashed by cold weather. So you would think that would be the opposite living here in the Mile High City, but no, the gods from the mountains have blessed us.
That's right. The sun shines brightest when you're that much closer, a mile up in elevation. Yeah, we
Absolutely.
got the. We're just a couple of old dudes talking about the weather. Yeah, we got the rain here in Southern California. It was a great weekend for my wife and I to transplant some of the roses in the garden. So all's good here,
Wait a
man.
minute, wait a
Taking
minute, wait a
advantage of
minute.
that rain.
I mean, you're moving flowers already?
Yeah, so the long and the short of it is we have plans to renovate our house. I know you'd love for me to be in a garage for the rest of the time as long as we do these. That's not the plan, but we had some roses that we have in planters now. So if we need to, get on out of here with the house being done, we can move
Yeah.
those roses easily because they're sentimental. Like a bouquet of flowers is nice, but I sort of got in this rhythm and routine. I'm buying like roses that we plant in the garden, and then my wife has them to commemorate Valentine's Day or our
Right.
anniversary, things like that. Because
Okay.
the bouquet dies 3 or 4 days later, whereas we have these in the ground and they are a constant reminder of what a great job I'm doing as a husband.
Love to hear it.
Well, it's just that look, it's just it works for me, might not work for you, but
Yeah.
just a thought to put out there into existence. Um, we've got a couple of things that I think we should hit on, and I am excited to get to sort of Nick your perspective and what teams are dealing with. The games are obviously not being played anymore. We were last year following the Super Bowl, and there are some teams that haven't played since the end of December. How do their off seasons look, especially when they bring in a new coach versus teams that are just looking to run it back? But first, I think a couple of items that are worth bringing up off the top. Tyreek Hill
Yeah.
officially hitting the open market, cut by the Miami Dolphins. They save 23 million in cap space, but meanwhile he's going to carry almost 30 in dead money. They have a much bigger decision awaiting them with Tua Tagovailoa, but the first big piece for Miami to go out, Tyreek Hill. Do you want to start with what that means for the Dolphins, or kind of, hey, do we want to start window shopping for some other team in free agency?
Well, let's start with the Miami Dolphins and Jeff Halfley, because it wasn't just Tyreek Hill that they parted ways with due to salary issues. And Bradley Chubb, former Denver Broncos edge
Yeah,
rusher, they parted
that's
ways
another
with
big
him.
one.
He's definitely a guy who I think is probably going to end up maybe in Philadelphia or
Oh,
maybe
oh,
in Baltimore. You remember, I mean, Bradley Chubb was in Miami with Vic Fangio, right? So there is somewhat of a relationship there. So he may not be out of work long, but as far as the Miami Dolphins, hey, listen, man, it's a total rebuild. And Jeff Halfley is coming in and say, look, this is my first time as a head coach. I
yeah,
know based on places I've been what I'm actually looking for. And it's kind of a addition by subtraction if you want to look at it, because you have to start
sure,
parting ways with guys and their salaries as you start to build later on. And you have to figure by making a move like this, Alex, obviously talking to Stephen Ross, saying, look, in order for us to build what you hope to be a challenging team in the AFC, especially in the East, you have to
yeah.
tear some stuff down. You got to tear it
Well,
down to the studs, but you don't want to rip it to shreds. So, I mean, I don't foresee A Chain going anywhere or Jalen
no, no,
Waddle.
no.
And I listen. I'll tell you this: the people here in Denver, they want Jalen Waddle because last season at the trade deadline, they were hoping to get Jalen Waddle then, but they're hoping that maybe the fire sale will continue in Miami and maybe they get lucky. I don't think so. Now, moving on to Tyreek Hill. Um, I would love to see Tyreek Hill kind of rejoin, the Kansas City Chiefs. I know people here in Denver would not love to hear me say that, but he's coming off an
Maybe.
ACL. Yeah, he's coming off.
Yeah.
Listen, he's coming off an ACL, and those are always tricky. So that may be something later down the road. That's not going to be at the beginning when free agency starts, but he's definitely going to be someone that's on their board that maybe Eric Bieniemy and Patrick Mahomes kind of try to go to bat for.
Yeah, maybe bring the band back together. I push back against a reunion with the Chiefs because obviously Tyreek Hill has his issues off the field. Kansas City knows that full well, in part why he was fell to the fifth round and such a success when he hit the ground running with Kansas City back then. But they have their own issues. I mean, Rashee Rice and the details that come out about an alleged domestic violence on top of the outcome of the driving issue. Like, how else do you put that he put multiple people in harm's way, and the Chiefs were fine, and then he came back, and these things just sort of pile up, and that inherent risk of bringing Tyreek Hill may outweigh the kind of production that you'll get for a 31-year-old receiver entering year 32 coming off of that ACL tear. So look, the reunion sounds like a nice way to go about it, but I wouldn't be shocked if another team that was a contending team in the AFC are looking to push their chips in, make a splash, get over the top. I'd say let's start with Buffalo, in desperate need of a playmaker, of a field stretcher, as someone who Josh Allen can rely on, and Tyreek Hill with an opportunity to play in a Super Bowl and maybe beat a Kansas City or another competing team in that conference. That just seems more interesting to me. But I think if you're Buffalo, you should be looking at every single free agent wide receiver available and just do a better job than you have been in the past. Let's stop throwing money at Curtis Samuel and Josh Palmer and trading draft capital for Amari Cooper. They have not done a good job evaluating the receiver position, but don't worry, that was all Sean McDermott's fault. Brandon Beane is going to lead the charge, and Joe Brady they know exactly what they're doing. I'm a little worried, but it stands to reason that not all 32 teams are going to be interested in a Tyreek Hill, but you just start with any number of those contending teams in the AFC, and it kind of makes sense for me.
Well, I mean, a guy of his caliber, when healthy, he would, make any offensive unit better. I mean, I immediately thought, as you were talking, I thought about Baltimore, right? Like,
Sure.
Baltimore has tried to do exactly what Buffalo has tried to do. Go out and get these veteran wide receivers. They brought in Newt Hopkins. That didn't work. And with Buffalo, like you said, they brought in Amari Cooper,
Yep.
Stephon Diggs, Brandon Cooks. That didn't work. At some point, you would have to develop your own receivers, and that's something that those teams need to do that they haven't done well. In case of Kansas City has done a better job using the marginal talent that they have, bringing in veteran guys, but also
Mm-hmm.
using their young guys, one of which who seem to find himself in trouble more frequently than you want.
Yep.
And I can see that would be a reason why, if you Brett Veach, you may not want to bring back Tyreek Hill for that particular reason, because knowing as though what Tyreek Hill has kind of gotten himself into from an off the field issue mixed with Rashee Rice may not be a great combination, or it could, because you could have a guy in Tyreek Hill who's known as though, I'm coming off an ACL injury, my career is winding down. Who
Yep.
better to advise? I know, as crazy as that sounds, who better to advise Rashee Rice other than the guy who's been there countless times?
Here's how you get caught less often as than you've been getting
Hey,
caught.
however you want to spin it, right?
He's a
It
cheetah for a
works,
reason. He can outrun,
right?
enough of his problems.
Yes.
Two more things. All I can do is go off of Cheetah's Twitter usage. Mike
Yeah.
McDaniel to the Chargers. Was something he posted, and he said Patriots in the Super Bowl. Happy for them. I'll just put those out there and just back away slowly. Uh, Tyreek Hill is certainly an interesting name, but probably one of the best players that would be available for other teams, not free agency. He hasn't been cut, but if you're willing to part with the draft capital, Maxx Crosby. The Vegas Raiders are in for another rebuild. That's all Crosby is known to this point, and I think the tenor has changed. Not not entirely. Although I will note that Maxx Crosby with Caleb Williams talking on his pod He had mentioned the idea of hoisting a Lombardi trophy. I feel like in years past that was always mentioned in tandem with hoisting a Lombardi trophy for the Raiders. Maxx
Right.
Crosby was the consummate Raider, and he's at a crossroads where he can go and chase that Lombardi, and there's a notion to it, right? He's pushed back against wanting to join somebody else. He's always wanted to put the Raiders in that position, or can he become a Joe Thomas of his era, be Mr. Raider, be identified as the best player for a team that just never really got their act together. I was optimistic for Josh McDaniels. I was optimistic for Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, but I'm optimistic for Clint Kubiak and Fernando Mendoza, which we're going to do plenty of draft coverage. The draft starts at number 2. As of February 18th, I know full well Fernando Mendoza is looking for real estate in the Henderson, Las Vegas area. So I think that's, pretty much a done deal. I'm a little more optimistic. Maybe Maxx Crosby can be sold on it. I do think it's interesting that he's talked about, granted, he's just having Caleb Williams on a podcast of his, but he's talking about winning a Lombardi and not necessarily winning that Lombardi with the Raiders. Personally, I think he should just be Mr. Raider.
Well, I don't want to read too much into it, but the whole idea, that's what you want your players to have, that idea and that mentality that you want to win in Lombardi. Him not saying as though I want to win it with the Raiders, it doesn't take away from him wanting to be with the Raiders, but it
Mm.
does add a little question and a little leverage for him, per se. Like, hey, I'm already developing connection. Then you have a guy in Caleb Williams who has a little more clout with Ben Johnson and that Chicago fan
Yeah.
base that maybe
Right, and
he
they
can
and
go
they
up.
wanted Ben Johnson in Vegas. Brady couldn't
Right.
close the
So
deal.
maybe he can go up to, Ryan Pace's office and say, did I get, is it Ryan Pace? Okay. Or
Ryan
Poles.
Poles. Ryan
Ryan
Poles. You're
Poles. Ryan
combining
Poles.
you're combining him with the last Bears GM.
Okay, so Ryan Poles. Now Caleb Williams can go up to his office and say, "Hey, we were right there on the precipice. You know what would go great with Montez Sweat? Oh, how about this guy?" Now that goes back to Poles actually valuing the, I guess, input for Caleb Williams, because we know how this works. Some teams say, well, they're going to give their young quarterback or their quarterback some input, but never really give him that much. So I think it was bloody brilliant by Maxx Crosby to do the podcast with Caleb Williams to
Mm-hmm.
kind of put that question mark in the air. What is Crosby thinking? Where does he want to go? And I know so many players say, I want to be this particular team for life. Like, remember Myles Garrett? I want out Cleveland until they gave him a bag and he was like, you know what? I think I'll stay. But
Yeah.
Maxx Crosby is a dominating player. I know he would love to be a Raider for life. But when you look at the transition rather, the team has undergone over the past 4 years, it doesn't seem like it's trending in the right direction. And then look at the division that you're in. The likelihood that in 2 seasons that Clint Kubiak will be able to turn that Raiders team around and then they're now contenders, that's going to be very difficult. And
Mm-hmm.
when you look at, Maxx Crosby, where he is in his career, I mean, at that point, you say, well, his best years are behind him. So that's something that he and his camp was need to start to think about. If I am going to get traded, I'm going to force myself out. I have to force myself to a team that is a true contender. And I would think the Baltimore Ravens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Weaver, one of my former teammates, he's back there as their defensive coordinator. What better addition that you could have to the Baltimore Ravens than adding a guy like Maxx Crosby who fits that team's overall personality?
Yeah, the Raiders, I think it would behoove them to move Crosby to the NFC, and as of today, upcoming for the 26th season, I think the path to the Super Bowl is a lot easier to go through the NFC. I say this knowing full well the Seahawks and the Rams were probably the best two teams in the league last year, but that AFC is just an absolute gauntlet. You mentioned the West. I'd like to be optimistic that the Raiders kind of look at the Denver situation and go, here's a team that was staring, 75 million in dead money for Russell Wilson. They
Yep.
don't care. They draft a quarterback, they build that defense, and they overachieve. And now they put themselves, in an AFC championship game just 2 years into the Bo Nix experience. So, Fernando may be that kind of guy. There are a lot of holes around the roster. And certainly being able to plug them with 2, 3 first-round picks and young talent would be the way to do it. But Maxx Crosby is just that is the identity of the football team. He is the leader that every other player can aspire to be. And, I think we're all nostalgic for the times of when players played for one team and they were a consistent force. Like, we're in the middle of college basketball season and the transfer portal era. Like, you just don't see the rivalries that you're used to because the players change. And it'd be really great if the AFC West, the best way to get after the quarterbacks you're facing when it's a Patrick Mahomes and a Justin Herbert and even a Bo Nix is a good pass rush. Like, you could get all of these picks and maybe get a player as good as Maxx Crosby. Like, it's difficult, but I say Raiders, and he's the first person I think of. I mean, it may be Tom Brady from here on out, but I'm thinking Maxx Crosby for now, and I'd like to see him stay. But I fully understand this isn't Tom Brady's decision. This isn't Mark Davis's decision. If Maxx Crosby wants to stay, he's going to stay. If he wants to go, he gave the first decade of his career to that team, did everything, went above and beyond. I think the team should reciprocate and let him go.
Well, you would like to think that that would be the case, but this is the business of football we're talking about. I can let you go, but I'm going to let you go where it benefits me. Like,
Right.
when I think about
Out of
what
the
happened,
AFC, I think was my first point.
right, when I think about what happened with Von Miller, when the Broncos decided they were going to part ways with Von Miller, very emotional for a guy who was drafted in the first round, by far the best, draft pick by John Elway. What did George Payton do? He could have sent him to Cleveland and let his career die, but no, he traded him to Sean McVay and the Rams, and he went on to win another chip, right? So maybe what you're saying to kind of show Maxx Crosby, hey, listen, man, we appreciate everything that you've given to us. We're going to put you in a better situation. But I was thinking about something, Alex. See, there's a way that you can actually keep Maxx Crosby. Because like you said, I mean, when you look at the Raiders, they have the number 1 overall pick, which is probably going to be Fernando Mendoza.
It will
now,
be, yeah.
They have a boatload of money.
Yes.
They have a lot of coin. And you're in the desert where your coin goes longer. So they probably would be able to acquire other guys. They just have to get the buy-in from Crosby, and they have to sell it to him and say, hey, listen, we have money. Here's what we're going to do. Oh, by the way, you're talking about Clint Kubiak, who was with the Seattle Seahawks. You know who the Seahawks are not going to put the franchise tag on? That's right, Kenneth Walker. So you get Kenneth Walker. You have Fernando Mendoza on a rookie deal.
You have Genty. You have Brock Bowers. Like,
all on rookie deals.
Come
on, Alex.
They need big bodies. Like, they need to shore up the trenches, both sides of the football. I'm not saying Walker isn't a bad idea, but then what was the point of spending the 4th overall pick on Ashton Genty if you're then going to spend 12, 13 million a year on a Kenneth Walker?
Well, you know why? Because you didn't predict this. You didn't know that Pete Carroll was going to fail, right? You didn't predict that, hey, Clint Kubiak was going to go and win a Super Bowl and Kenneth Walker was going to be available as the MVP. And then here's what it does for you. Like, if Kenneth Walker comes there, that gives you a 1-2 punch. And like I said, all those guys are on rookie deals, so you can sell it. And just so happens, if Kenneth Walker comes in and he becomes the guy, it gives you an opportunity to trade away Ashton Genty.
Oh, no. See, that's
what?
Spytech is still there. Like, that's their guy. This is the Falcons extending Tyler Algier and moving on from Bijan Robinson. That's
no,
the
it's
kind
not.
of behavior.
No,
yes,
it's not. Come on, Alex. It's not the same thing. Bijan is an extraordinary guy. Algier is just kind of breaking case of emergency. He is just reliable, but he's not like a game changer like Bijan. But once again, Genty is extraordinary. You already know what Kenneth Walker can do. You're just waiting, and you saw some signs of Ashton Genty. It at least gives you a 1-2 punch for at least 2 years before you have to make a choice and make a decision.
If I'm going to grade the Raiders free agency period, like if we fast forward and we're, the veterans are all added, I don't want to look at the dollar value. I don't even want to look at, their stats from last year. I'm just going to sort it by weight. And if the Raiders add 3, 4, 5 guys and their weight starts with a 3, big bodies, I'll know the Raiders did a better job. That's all I'm saying. They need to build. They need to rebuild those trenches, both sides of the ball. And if they
That's
do
gonna
that,
happen,
that's the
Alex.
foundation. Okay.
Okay,
Plus Kenneth
o-
Walker. I got
okay.
you.
Let,
I
let me tell you what it is that I know. The
okay.
tree of which Clint Kubiak comes from, it is built on what? The run game, right?
Yep.
He had John Benson, who was a coach in San Francisco when I was there. He had Rick Dennison, who was a coach here when when I played for the Denver Broncos. Rick Dennison was also in Houston when I was there with his dad, Clint Kubiak. And oh, by the way, Rick Dennison is with Clint Kubiak, or was with Clint Kubiak in Seattle. So you have to figure that group who understands the run game because they either coach with his dad or they coach with Mike Shanahan, they're going to make that a point of emphasis, especially if you are planning on drafting with the overall
Yeah.
pick, Fernando Mendoza. You're starting with the trenches.
I
You don't
cannot
believe me.
I
You can't
cannot
see
thank
it.
you enough for just saying the same thing I did, just much more eloquently. Like that is why you are who you are, and I'm just teeing you up. And I'm not lobbing, I'm not throwing you meatballs. I'm literally just the tee, and you can swing that bat and just get around on one. Um, they just need to draft players that they're willing to play. Like it was a big problem that they spent early draft capital, second, third, I think a second and fourth round pick on receivers that didn't even play. They're adding Tyler Lockett off the street. They're making ways of trying to get this, maybe a Pete Carroll thing, and hopefully it goes away. And Clint Kubiak identifies the guys he wants to play. But it's like they were spending like rich draft capital on skill players that didn't even make the field. So let's just hope a different regime, things turn for the Raiders. Not at the expense of your Broncos. I get it, but let's just hope that Clint Kubiak and Fernando Mendoza and this identity of the Raiders is strong enough to keep that fan base rabid and to keep Maxx Crosby there. We mentioned Kubiak. We mentioned the Dolphins. They are two of the 10 teams that have new head coaches, and not all new head coaching situations are the same, right? We had internal hires. We did this a year ago with the likes of Brian Schottenheimer. We had the big splashes this offseason. Ben Johnson turning around the Bears, Mike Vrabel turning around the Patriots, Liam Cohen. Like, how often is it that you have three coaches that come in and deliver double-digit wins in their first season? It's very, very rare, but we sort of get the impression that there are good teams that filled their head coaching vacancies, and maybe we can recreate some of that success. But I want to start with kind of an overall arching view, right? The Patriots, the Seahawks, even the Broncos and the Rams, they just wrapped up their seasons just a few weeks ago. Meanwhile, there are teams that they've been cooked, they've been done, they fired their coach and began a head coaching search in the year of our Lord 2025. So overall, Nick, the perspective of a team that's bringing in a new coach, and there are 10 of them, and we can go case by case, maybe shine the light on certain situations. How does their process sort of begin, and how do they get up to speed when they're bringing in a new coach, a new front office, and they're trying to do this all while other teams are keeping their infrastructure together as they prepare? We're coming up on the NFL Combine. Free agency is just around the corner, the NFL Draft right after.
Well, the best way to look at it, all 32 teams, regardless of the 10 infusions of the new head coaches, they're all hitting the same reset button. Everyone is
Mm-hmm.
starting over at the finish line. Now, are there some advantages to some of the coaches who've been in place already? Absolutely. But they still have to endure the same challenges of the 10 new coaches. You have to assess your roster. Who you keeping? Who you letting go? Are you restructuring deals? Right? And then who are you looking to add? Can you afford those guys in free agency? And if you can't, can you go out in the draft and find some of those guys to fill those voids? But more importantly, add depth to the roster. So there's some coaches who are in better situations than some other coaches. Case in point, just think about this. If you're Mike McCarthy, you're going to
Yep.
Pittsburgh,
Yeah,
you're
let's start there.
following, yeah, okay, so you're following Mike Tomlin, right? And you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've had over the past, I don't know, since the beginning of their franchise, I mean, 3 head coaches who have had long tenures. Now McCarthy becomes the 4th coach. Can he duplicate that same performance? But here's their problem. They have an aging team. They have an aging quarterback. They're in somewhat of a division that, guess what? Baltimore now has a new head coach. The Cleveland Browns now have a new head
Mm-hmm.
coach. Could they overtake that
The
division?
Cincinnati Bengals will have a new coach a year from now.
Well, I almost thought that for the first time in league history, we were going to have four new coaches in one division. We did not
No,
have it.
no,
But
no.
once again, the idea is that, when you look at McCarthy in the position that he's in, someone can say, well, you know what? He's got a chance. But once again, there's too many uncertainties with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now.
I mean, Steeler fans got exactly what they wanted, right?
Yeah.
Aaron
How about
Rodgers
that?
is Aaron Rodgers is run out. Mike Tomlin is gone, but they replaced Mike Tomlin with the 63-year-old Mike McCarthy. This isn't just an ageism, shout out millennials or Gen Alpha or whatever. It's just that you're not going to have a 20-year entrenched Mike McCarthy when year one is 63 years old. Like, this is breaking the mold of what the Pittsburgh Steelers do, but at the same time, they're just trying to keep the band playing on the Titanic as this aging roster is coming head on towards an iceberg. Like, yes, the standard is the standard. Mike Tomlin made that, his mantra for the last 20 years, but I just don't see how the Steelers kind of keep things together and leapfrog the other teams in the AFC that were better than them. They have a good program. Mike McCarthy will kind of instill that. He's going to look to call plays too, which is interesting. Should be better than Arthur Smith. We'll see. But they still just lack the overall personnel, and especially at the signal caller, where they can leapfrog the teams in the AFC that they are inferior to. They beat the teams they're supposed to beat, and then they just get boat raced in the first round of the playoffs. Like, that has been the reason why they haven't won a playoff game in nearly a decade at this point. And you can hear it. This is the exact same argument I made for Tyreek Hill. Like, Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy didn't get along. Like, why would he come back now? So they're going to start over at the quarterback position and maybe overpay for somebody like Malik Willis or part with draft capital to get a Mac Jones. None of those guys really inspire me to think that Pittsburgh can vault themselves into another AFC North title or a win in the playoffs, let alone the expectation of a deep run in the playoffs. They have the most expensive defense. They have the oldest defense. They have ungodly cap numbers for guys like T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward, and they have to re-up Nick Herbig. Like, their pass rush and their run defense is the most important thing to keep this team afloat, and there are just too many question marks. But I understand that they may be a leg up given Mike McCarthy's done this before. They have an established culture and an identity as the Pittsburgh Steelers compared to, we mentioned the Raiders and the Dolphins. And another situation more like Pittsburgh's would be, the teams that I'd say are better than them. Buffalo hiring from within, promoting Joe Brady, and Jesse Minter switching Harbaugh's, going to Baltimore. Like, they're kind of in a similar boat to Pittsburgh, and they both have better quarterbacks, so I'm more optimistic about them going into next season.
Well, I'm more optimistic about Baltimore. If you were to look at all the 10 jobs that were filled, that's kind of the just add water and stir type of situation. Jesse Mentor has proven that, that's how he got into this position, that he understands, football, and he's willing to help Lamar. And I look at this situation similar to something that is close to you. When you look at the relationship between your quarterback Tom Brady and Bill Belichick,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we say, well, when you have a quarterback, you want these hotshot offensive coordinators. But I'm like, there's room for defensive coaches as well, because
Yeah.
I look at that Brady Belichick situation. When you know defense as well as you can help set up your quarterback, be a rookie or a veteran, by taking them through the nuances. Okay, well, here's what I would do against you as a defense. What would you do to break our defense down? This is how you start that toolage and that football IQ, which helped out, both Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. I'm not suggesting that
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore is going to go on a 20-year run, because looking at where Lamar Jackson is in his career, but I do think with Jesse Mentor in the building, and you bringing back Anthony Weaver, who's familiar with that defense, that's going to help out. And, oh,
Yeah.
by the way, you got freaking Derrick Henry, right? How many coaches out there could say that, hey, defensively, my unit is intact. I need to go do a couple of things here and there. Kyle Williams, Roquan Smith, and then you got Derrick Henry and you have Lamar Jackson. Only thing is, just don't screw it up. And the way that they help themselves out by adding some true wide receivers, that would be, or in my opinion, one of the better jobs to take. But I still won't sleep on the other Harbaugh, who's with the New York Giants and that defense that they have. But if you had to twist my arm and you had to say which of these jobs were the better jobs of the other nine, I'm going to say the Baltimore Ravens.
Yep, and John in New York, like he believes in Jackson Dart, and he believe in that defense, and he's the culture guy, right? He's the CEO. He's not calling offense. He's not calling defense. So you just need an adult in the room, right? When Cam Scadaboo and Jackson Dart are taking their turns, bashing their heads against the wall. You just need someone who's not willing to parade around in the blue tent like Brian Daboll did. And meanwhile, like the other teams that like Robert Saleh coming back with Tennessee, your guy, that it's a different opportunity, and we'll hope that maybe the Titans organization will be somewhat more upright than say a New York Jets one, with all the meddling that Woody Johnson is doing and has been doing. And then Arizona and Cleveland, I think we're both holding out on Clint Kubiak, and neither got their guy. And Cleveland's whole situation, they were looking for a coach that would agree to take on Jim Schwartz as the DC without really running it by Jim Schwartz, because clearly bringing in Todd Monken and him handing in his resignation, like Jim Schwartz wanted to be there, he had been there, and believed he should have been a coach over Todd Monken. It's like for the likes of the Cardinals, the Titans, the Browns, teams that are all in difficult situations, that all kind of brought their head coaches in a little bit later. How do they sort of not necessarily catch up, but how do they instill a different culture than the ones that have been permeating as they're trying to keep chase with, we know what we're getting in John Harbaugh and Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, you know what you're getting in those particular coaches, but I'm not going to sleep on Todd Monken like most people are. I mean, just think, this is a talented coach.
I mean, the
And
play calling, like, MVP
yeah,
Lamar, national championships with Georgia beforehand. Like, I totally agree.
yeah, and then you just look at some of the weapons he has in Cleveland. Their issue there is that, okay, well, listen, you have Myles Garrett, you have a decent defense, you're going to lose David Njoku. So, you still have another talented tight end on that roster.
Yep.
And
Love
for
Harold
me,
Fannin.
yes. So for me, the first thing that Monk is going to have to address, the same thing that we talked about with Clint Kubiak, you got to do something about that offensive line, because I'm going to tell
Oh,
you, their left tackle, oh my God, his technique was the worst.
well,
Was
that's
the
fine
worst.
because I don't know the numbers or the statistics on this, but all five starting offensive linemen are set to be free agents. Earlier today, February 18th, Wyatt Teller, who's been hurt over and over and over again, said, "I'm not coming back to Cleveland." Well, we already kind of knew that,
Yeah,
but
they probably don't want you back either.
how often is it that all five starting free agent, all five starters on the offensive line are free agents at the same time?
It,
Like,
it, it's rare, rare.
yeah, but it goes to show you just what they think of those guys. And maybe they bring one or two of them back, but you're right. That they need to address out of necessity. But really, is Todd Monken there to try to prop up Shadur Sanders and try to see if that's a thing? Or are they going after a quarterback this year with the ample draft capital that they
Mm.
got from moving down, in the Travis Hunter trade? Like, it is just so hard to know if now's the time for them to go get a quarterback, or see if they can just build something with Shador because he's there, and let's see what else they can kind of do. I mean,
Well,
that's what Monken is tasked with.
okay, listen. The idea of going out and getting another quarterback, we've seen this movie before. I mean, M. Night Shyamalan couldn't have written a better script for the Cleveland Browns in their quarterback situation. That some have this idea, if you don't have your quarterback, you keep drafting until you do. To me, I think that's a stupid philosophy. I hate to use the
Yep.
word stupid, but it's not a very logical one, because that tells me that you're not doing a great job in your draft preparation, analysis, and evaluation of guys. And then you're not doing a great job with the development of the quarterback by putting skilled players in an adequate offensive line around him. So I think if you were Todd Monken, it's known as though Todd Monken kind of joked with Shador Sanders when they first met. Hey
Yeah.
man, we try to get you in Baltimore, right? So that says as though there is something there, even though Todd Monken would not commit right now to Shador Sanders being the
And
starter.
reportedly, Shador didn't want to go to Baltimore.
Right, exactly. So I think that relationship is a little more solid than that of Dylan Gabriel. That doesn't mean that you don't have a quarterback competition in Cleveland. The idea is that Monken is there to use his wits to make either of those two young quarterbacks better. I think what they should do, roll with those two quarterbacks. Maybe you add a veteran just to kind of, back up as a wingman. But there's so many other things that they can do to better enhance this team because remember, I mean, Shador had a couple of games where he looked good,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, he beat, albeit the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he still beat that team and he made some adequate throws. All he needs is a coach now in Todd Munkins who believes in him more than Kevin Stefanski, and who knows what can happen.
Shout out Kevin Stefanski. If it didn't quite work with Cleveland, we'll see how the exact same program is going to work in Atlanta. Bringing back Tommy Rees and Alex Van Pelt and all these guys on the offensive staff, guys that he had worked with in Cleveland, and our guy Bill Callahan as well. Your guys Jeff Ulbrich and Tanner Engstrad. Like it is going to be Cleveland Browns in the 404. And I didn't want to omit Kevin Stefanski because that's another weird opportunity that they're in quarterback purgatory as well, given all the setbacks with Michael Penix.
Mm-hmm.
He's Nick Ferguson. I'm Alex Hardy. I just, understanding the calendar and what these teams are up against, it'll help shine a light when we get to certain points, right? The combine right around the corner, free agency, the NFL draft, and training camps. Like, we're going to have the perspective, thanks to you, Nick, on where some of these teams are at now, based on, the new faces or some of the same people that are in the building. So I'm excited to get out the stopwatch and absolutely vault somebody 3 rounds in the draft because they run 4/10 of a second faster with their underwear on. Like, that's really all that matters, Nick. And as someone who was not invited to the NFL Combine, not drafted, pretty much how you show up in Indianapolis will define your entire NFL career. I think that's pretty much that's where I'm at. That's what I know to be true.
Well, for some, that is said to be true, but as a player, I'm going to tell you it's not always true. Just because someone looks great in a t-shirt and short Olympics, and you're thinking, okay, well, let's project them to be first rounders or even second rounders, that doesn't guarantee you success. You have to look at your roster. Where do these guys fit from a character standpoint? Where do they fit in our scheme? If you're going to draft a guy in the first round or the second round, you better have a plan for him. And I don't mean just sitting there watching, holding the clipboard plan. No, you better have a plan for him to say, at some point in the season, we hope that this player can be inserted into the lineup on the offensive, defensive side and be an impact player. Because if you don't find any impact players or you think a guy's an impact player right away, don't draft him.
At Nick Ferguson _25, I'm Alex Hardy. We are those guys. You see these guys over there? Well, don't forget about those guys. We'll be back. And we're gonna do some draft preview. We're gonna do some combine. There's gonna be other free agents on the move. So all of the big and latest news, you'll get Nick's reaction, mine as well. So until next time, Nick, what do you have to say to the people?
Well, this time of the year is just like approaching the summer. It is time for teams to shed some weight and show a little skin.
Get the sweat on.